This door is actually very young. This door is from 1996. It's when Pope John Paul II was here. He was visiting Ljubljana because we had an anniversary of 1,250 years of Christianity on these grounds. And this door, the Slovenian door, basically represents this whole history. And it's a good tool, basically, to tell the history of the city. It starts down there with the ancient Roman remains, because this city was first built as a military fortress by the Romans, and only then became the first city. And in the Roman times, it wasn't called Ljubljana like today, it was called Emona. We'll see when we go into the town hall, we'll see where Emona exactly was in terms of the city, because there's a huge map. But anyway, this is a tiny little Christianing pool, already from Roman times, and it started in the 2nd century when one of the Roman emperors basically passed an order to allow other religions aside from the ancient Roman gods in the Roman Empire. And from it grows the symbol of Slovenia, the linden tree. And here you see father, mother, son, red, as basically the family as the basic element of our society. Now, after the Romans, the Roman Empire fell in the 5th century. It was basically, what do you call it? It was a lot of barbaric tribes came from the east and basically destroyed the empire, which was already also cracking from within. But even Ljubljana in the 5th century, it was destroyed by these barbaric tribes, was burned down, and only a few people remained. And after this 5th century, we call this the Dark Ages, because there were very few people on these grounds at all. And this was so until the 9th century, when the Slavs basically started moving from behind the Carpathy Mountains, from the east basically, and started settling on the entire continent of the Balkans and upwards, you know, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and so forth. And now the Slavic people had their princes, but the Slavs, they were pagans. And what happened was basically the Slavs, or basically the Slovenians, the old Slovenians in these grounds, had a lot of basically aggression from the Avari. Avari were a people, today they are Hungarians. And anyway, our princes asked the Franks for help. Franks are basically of Germanic origin, and the Franks said, okay, we'll help you, but you have to give us your sons, the prince's sons, as hostages. So when we did so, they were raised as Christians, and when they come back, they brought Christianity. These are these two sons accepting the Christian religion. Now these two guys, they are actually Greek, but they were diplomats, Greek diplomats. They were traveling a lot around Slavic countries in the 9th century, and they knew the language of the Slavs. And these are the two guys, they're called Cyril and Method. Cyril's students actually thought of the writing that today is called Cyrillic. And these two guys discovered the first, or made up the first writing of the Slavs, which was called Glagolica. Now, these knights, this is the Teutonic Knights Order. They are basically a symbol for all the religious orders in Ljubljana in those times, because they were very important. In the Middle Ages, the orders were basically doing all the functions of the state. They were taking care of the sick, taking care of the poor. They had the whole school system. They were also taking care of the defense, and this is this function that we see, the defense function. And I've already told you that the defense function was very important in those times because of this aggression coming from the Ottoman Empire. Now the Turks were in front of the wall of Ljubljana for the first time in 1415, so 15th century, and from the 15th century on they were coming here a lot, you know. It was like a holiday. Every year they came a little bit, but they weren't doing very nice things. They were burning down villages, they were robbing, they were burning down churches, and they were basically taking the children as well and raising them as their own soldiers. And if you were in the city, the Ljubljana was never basically defeated by the Turks, taken over by the Turks, because it was well protected. So if you were in the city, you were pretty much protected. But the farmers on the land, they weren't protected. The only place they could go to were the churches, and even the churches were often burned down. So what happened was the farmers started rebelling. On one hand, because of the lack of protection from the Turks, and on the other hand, this was also the era of feudalism. So a lot of taxes, a lot of work for the feudal lords, which was all pressing down on them. This is the time of, until the end of the 17th century when the farmers were rebelling. Now up there you see 3 books being held up. This is a symbol of Protestantism. And basically Protestantism brought us the first books, printed books in Slovenian language, and the idea of the Protestants, starting with Martin Luther and then coming to these grounds as well, was that every people should have a right to practice their own religion in their own language, and that, hence the first books. Now the 3 guys you see here, they're all bishops. The one on the left, Tomaž Hren, he's a rather negative figure because he's the one who formed the Anti-Reformist Commission, so he was the one prosecuting the Protestants. In the middle there's the total opposite. He's the one saint that we have, Slomšek, and on the right this is a guy who was actually in your country a long time ago. He was a missionary among the Indians, hence the little Indian on his book. Now on the left side you see lots of people disappearing into a cave, and that's a symbol for both of the world wars. And on the right hand you see basically already a free people after the both world wars, after the break apart of Yugoslavia, holding up a flower to the Pope. So that's in short a history of Slovenia. We got independence from Yugoslavia in 91. There was a 10-day war with the Serbian army, which was multinational because as a federation we had a common army which consisted of all the people. So even Slovenians had to be in that army, but they then joined our side, obviously. In 2004 we joined the European Union. Since 2007 we've got the Euro, and there you have it, basically the history. I think we can go to the town hall now.
What's his name right here, third guy?
Baraga.
Baraga.
Baraga. That's his last name.